Day 1 begins not with action but with silence. You must learn to disappear from the eyes of those who think they know you. Withdraw your familiar gestures, your predictable replies, your casual warmth. What is predictable is weak. The first rule of transformation is to shatter recognition. On day 2, strip yourself of every unguarded habit. Do not smile when expected. Do not answer quickly. Do not indulge in the comfort of explanation. A ruler who explains too much becomes a servant of the opinions of others. You must learn to leave their questions unanswered, to cultivate in them a hunger to know your intent. Mystery is the seed of authority. By day 3, you will see resistance from those who depend on your old self. They will provoke, they will test, they will beg for the familiar mask to return. Hold firm. To change your form, you must let the weaker bonds break. Power is not gained by pleasing, but by forcing recalibration. When they no longer read you, they begin to orbit you. Day 4 is the day of concealment. Learn to cloak your true ambition. Never allow others to see the center of your will. They may see fragments, but never the whole. Let them think you are careless, distracted, or simple. The more they misjudge you, the safer you are. To be underestimated is to be armored. By day 5, begin small displays of control. Delay meeting. Answer when you choose. Interrupt the rhythm of others. The essence of command is not volume but timing. Make them wait, make them adjust, and they will unconsciously accept your authority. Day 6 is for the sharpening of the mind. Study not ideals but outcomes. Examine how fear bends loyalty, how hope is bought with appearances, how betrayal hides in the shadow of praise. Collect these truths as a soldier collects weapons. Day 7. You must begin to cut. Identify those who drain your strength, those who gossip, those who cling. Remove them quietly. Weakness is contagious. You cannot be reborn if you are surrounded by decay. By day 8, adopt the face of moderation. Do not reveal the steel beneath. Let them believe you are reasonable, patient, slow to anger. But behind this mask, sharpen the knife of necessity. Power is best hidden in gentleness until it is time to strike. Day 9 demands the control of your voice. Every word you speak must be weighted, measured, cold. Do not rush, do not stumble. When you speak rarely, men will cling to each syllable as if it were law. On day 10, practice the art of division, not in chaos, but in subtle design. Set rivalries where needed. Encourage competition among those who serve you. When they fear one another, they cannot unite against you. Day 11 is for the discipline of emotion. Anger, joy, sorrow, each must be trained like a dog. Show them only when it serves you, never when it consumes you. The ruler who loses himself loses the state. By day 12, master the theater of appearances. Dress with precision, move with intent. Every gesture must tell a story greater than your words. Men believe their eyes more than their ears, and they follow the illusion they admire. Day 13 is for listening. Speak less, hear more, not to learn the truth but to gather the fragments of their weakness. Each word they reveal is a weapon you may later turn against them. On day 14, shape your absence. Do not be too available. Withdraw suddenly. Let your silence become a weight upon them. They will interpret your absence as they wish, but always with unease. In unease lies your power. Day 15. Choose one decisive act that breaks expectation. Replace kindness with coldness or silence with command. The shock will reset their perception of you. They will begin to realize you are no longer the person they once grasped. By day 16, plant false trails. Let rumors of your weakness circulate. Allow them to believe you are distracted, failing, or vulnerable. When they strike, reveal your true strength. Nothing terrifies more than an enemy who rises where he was thought defeated. Day 17 is the discipline of patience. Delay gratification, delay revenge, delay reward. Those who act too quickly betray their hunger. Those who wait appear eternal. Patience is the most violent weapon of power. Day 18. Practice the art of refusal. Decline offers, decline invitations, decline explanations. Refusal is the mark of sovereignty. The man who cannot say no is already enslaved. On day 19, reforge your alliances. Seek those who add strength, not comfort. Loyalty is not given. It is engineered through fear, through benefit, through dependence. Ask not who loves you, but who needs you. Day 20. Stand apart. Let them see you, but not touch you. Let them hear you, but not know you. Become an image more than a man, a presence more than a companion. Those who appear untouchable are the ones who are obeyed. On day 21, seal the transformation. Burn the last remnants of the old self. Do not look back. The weak cling to memory. The powerful build anew. When they see you now, they will not recognize you. You will have become ungraspable, unassailable, unrecognizable. This is the coldest law of power, to master yourself so completely that others can never master you. Power is not inherited in its pure form. It is forged through the erasure of past identities and the deliberate construction of a presence that commands attention while concealing intention. To become unrecognizable is not to vanish, but to transform into something beyond grasp, an entity they cannot predict, cannot label, cannot use against itself. The 21 days are not a ritual of improvement, but a weaponization of self. Each day is a shedding of weakness, each hour a redefinition of command. To lead in this fractured world, one must understand that permanence is death. The ruler who remains unchanged is a map already drawn, a fortress already breached. Transformation is the currency of survival, and only the one who masters the art of becoming other than he was will remain sovereign when others crumble. In exile, I learned this truth with bitter clarity. To be known is to be predictable, and to be predictable is to be destroyed. Friends became betrayers, allies turned into judges, and the crowd that once cheered hungered for a spectacle of ruin. It was not the knife in the dark that defeated me, but the memory of my own constancy. They knew my habits, my voice, my impulses, and in knowing, they trapped me. The true lesson of downfall is that familiarity breeds not loyalty, but contempt, and contempt invites the strike. Therefore, to endure, one must become a shifting mirror reflecting what is needed, concealing what is true, and never allowing the gaze of others to settle. Consider the nature of loyalty. It is not born from love, for love is fragile, nor from admiration, for admiration fades. Loyalty is engineered by necessity, and necessity is born from design. To make men loyal, you must place them in a labyrinth where every path leads back to you. Their survival must depend on your favor, their prosperity on your silence, their future on your nod. In such a design, affection is irrelevant. Even hatred becomes harmless, for the man who hates you but needs you remains your servant. This is the unspoken machinery behind the theater of rulership. Men do not follow because they wish to. They follow because they cannot imagine otherwise. Fear, too, must be treated not as cruelty but as architecture. Fear is the invisible scaffolding that holds the structure of power upright. It is not the scream of terror, but the quiet hesitation before one speaks your name that proves your sovereignty. Fear must be measured, never reckless, for excess breeds rebellion, while absence breeds contempt. The art lies in striking balance, enough to remind them you can wound, enough to let them hope you will not. To be feared rightly is to be the horizon of their imagination, the boundary they dare not cross, the storm they respect even when the sky is calm. Yet betrayal remains the constant shadow, the silent guest at every table of power. Do not imagine you can eliminate it. To be betrayed is the tax of rulership, the natural rhythm of human ambition. Men betray not because you failed them, but because opportunity whispered more sweetly in their ear. The wise ruler is never surprised by betrayal, but prepares for it as one prepares for winter, expected, inevitable, survivable. Betrayal loses its sting when you understand it as part of the game, when you place your enemies where they can only wound themselves in the attempt to wound you. The theater of appearances is where power is truly minted. Men follow images more readily than they follow truths. They are creatures of perception, slaves to symbols, worshippers of shadows. You may be weak yet appear strong, foolish yet appear wise, compromised yet appear untouchable. And they will obey the appearance, never questioning the substance. To command in this world, you must master illusion as surely as steel. For one sword may kill a man, but one image can enslave a city. Those who govern without theater are merely administrators. Those who rule through appearances become legends. In this lies the coldest law of power. You must craft yourself as a presence beyond the grasp of memory and the reach of expectation. You must walk among men as though you belong to another order, a different rhythm, a hidden current that moves beneath their sight. To be unrecognizable is to be untouchable. And in a world built on fragile loyalties, fleeting admiration, and inevitable betrayal, untouchable is the only true crown. Power is not gentle. It does not bend itself to morality, nor does it wait for the hesitant hand to grasp it. It rewards only those who seize it with clarity and shape it with precision. The weak imagine that power is an inheritance or a gift, when in truth, it is nothing but conquest disguised as necessity. Every man carries within him the seed of ambition, but only a few have the courage to strip away comfort, sever old ties, and embrace the solitude required to hold dominion over others. To be unrecognizable is to reject the prison of expectation, to burn the bridges of familiarity, and to step into the cold space where fear and respect intertwine. Those who dare this transformation learn that survival is not found in clinging to the known, but in becoming the unknown itself. Leadership is never about harmony. It is about the orchestration of conflict. The state is not a family. It is a battlefield veiled in ceremony. Behind every oath lies suspicion. Behind every alliance lies calculation. Behind every smile lies a blade. A ruler who forgets this truth is not merely naive, he is doomed. The wise understand that men are not bound by honor, but by advantage, and that advantage shifts as swiftly as the tide. To govern is to stand at the edge of treachery with steady hands, to welcome loyalty when it serves, and to accept betrayal when it comes, never lamenting but always preparing. The heart that clings to trust is the heart that will be torn apart, but the mind that anticipates deceit remains sovereign. There is no permanence in rule, only the rhythm of rise and decline. History is littered with those who mistook their moment for eternity, who built monuments not realizing that stone too crumbles and memory too betrays. The ruler who endures is not the one who resists change, but the one who bends with it, shaping himself anew each season, discarding what no longer serves, adopting what frightens others to adopt. To reign is to reinvent ceaselessly, to be both familiar enough to be followed and distant enough to be feared. It is a delicate balance between visibility and absence, presence and enigma. Once they fully know you, you are already defeated. Once they can predict you, you are already dethroned. Ambition is not the pursuit of wealth or honor alone. It is the hunger to impose one's will upon chaos. Wealth without control is vulnerability. Honor without power is a costume for fools. Ambition that endures must be sharpened into strategy, a relentless reordering of the world so that your survival is non-negotiable. The throne is not secured by love, nor by prayers, nor by ideals. It is secured by fear tempered with restraint, by manipulation cloaked in fairness, by ruthlessness balanced with timing. To hold command is to accept the burden that you may be hated, despised, even cursed, yet still obeyed. The solitude of power is the final trial. The higher you rise, the fewer stand beside you, and the less their affection matters. You must accept that to lead is to be alone, to sleep with vigilance as your only companion, to eat with suspicion as your closest advisor. Yet within that solitude lies freedom, for when you no longer depend on their approval, you are untouchable. They will whisper your name in fear, curse it in envy, praise it in public, but they will never escape its weight. This is not the fate of the dreamer, nor the idealist, but of the one who has embraced necessity without flinching. To become unrecognizable is to become inevitable. It is to rise above their categories, to dissolve the chains of identity, and to embody a force they cannot anticipate nor resist. This is the coldest law of power. The world does not remember the man who remained himself. It remembers only the one who reshaped himself until no rival could comprehend his design. The struggle for power is never a single act but an endless campaign, a war fought not only against enemies outside, but against the complacency within. Each day is a battlefield where hesitation is defeat and calculation is survival. Those who falter imagine that life grants them reprieve, that moments of peace are signs of permanence. Yet peace is only the interlude where rivals sharpen their knives. To command is to know that security is illusion, that every throne is a fortress surrounded by invisible ladders, and that vigilance must be as constant as breath. The ruler who forgets this truth does not fall by force alone. He collapses under the weight of his own blindness. Human nature is a terrain as treacherous as any battlefield. Men crave security but despise submission. They admire strength yet envy it. They swear loyalty while dreaming of betrayal. The wise ruler does not waste himself lamenting this duplicity, he exploits it. He knows that men can be bound by fear more reliably than by love, and that appearances of generosity are more effective than true generosity itself. He grants hope with one hand while tightening control with the other, ensuring that every path they imagine toward freedom leads back to his design. To command human beings, one must first strip away illusions of their nobility and accept them as they are, creatures of appetite, suspicion, and desire. In this cold clarity lies the key to dominion. Deception, when wielded with precision, is not treachery, but strategy. To reveal all is to invite destruction, for transparency is the luxury of the powerless. The mask is not weakness, it is armor. The false promise is not cruelty, it is leverage. The ruler who can deceive convincingly governs not only action but imagination, and in governing imagination he binds men more tightly than chains ever could. For the mind that believes a lie has already surrendered its freedom. Thus, the art of deception is not to trick for amusement, but to shape the theater in which all others perform. Ambition is the fire that sustains this theater, yet fire without control consumes the one who bears it. Reckless ambition invites exposure, but disciplined ambition creates inevitability. The disciplined ruler measures each move, never acting from impulse but from design, never pursuing every opportunity but only those that weaken his rivals while strengthening his position. To restrain the hand when the moment is not ripe is as great a display of power as the strike itself. Restraint is not weakness. It is sovereignty over one's own hunger, a sovereignty that frightens more than any display of rage. The coldest victories are the most enduring. The sudden conquest excites envy, but the slow, methodical erosion of a rival leaves no trace of revolt. By the time they realize they have lost, their strength has already bled away. Such victories require patience, calculation, and an indifference to the clamor of the crowd. For crowds worship spectacle, but rulers endure through silence. To be seduced by applause is to build your house on shifting sand. The wise ruler seeks not their cheer but their obedience, not their affection but their dependence. In dependence lies permanence, and in permanence lies survival. To walk this path is to abandon illusions of virtue untainted by necessity. Virtue alone is brittle. Vice alone is self-destructive. But the ruler who bends virtue and vice into instruments of command becomes untouchable. Justice becomes a mask for authority, mercy a tool for pacification, cruelty a method of deterrence, and deceit a shield against betrayal. In this synthesis lies the truth. Morality is not the master of power but its servant, and only the one who dares to wield it as such can endure the endless storm of politics without being consumed. The essence of survival in power lies in learning to move unseen, even when all eyes are fixed upon you. Visibility is inevitable, but recognition is a choice. Let them witness your gestures, but never allow them to decode the mind behind them. Let them see your presence, but never the roots of your intentions. In this way you remain a puzzle, an enigma that commands both curiosity and caution. The ruler who is too easily read becomes a page that anyone can rewrite. The one who remains unreadable becomes scripture, interpreted endlessly yet never truly grasped. Conflict is the natural state of the world, not an interruption of peace but the engine of its cycles. Those who dream of lasting harmony dream of shadows, for every accord contains the seed of future discord. A treaty is but a pause, an alliance is but a calculation, and peace itself is but the mask of exhaustion before war resumes. To lead within this rhythm is not to resist it, but to master it, to strike when others rest, to prepare when others celebrate, to calculate while others indulge. The ruler who aligns himself with this eternal current of conflict cannot be toppled by it. He rides it as a sailor rides the tide. Control does not rest merely in the power to act, but in the ability to decide when not to act. Restraint is the rarest form of power, for it requires mastery not over others, but over the self. The hand that holds back when provoked, the tongue that stays silent when baited, the face that remains calm when insulted, these are the marks of command. For in politics, it is not the outburst that secures victory, but the silence that prepares the strike. The man who cannot rule himself cannot hope to rule a state, for he becomes the servant of his own passions and the prisoner of his enemy's manipulations. Appearances, though fragile, are the strongest weapons. Men are more loyal to what they imagine than to what they endure. They would rather follow the image of strength than the reality of weakness, even when they suspect the difference. Thus, to govern is to craft illusions so compelling that truth becomes irrelevant. A ruler who embodies certainty can be hollow within, yet men will still obey him, for obedience is born of perception, not reality. The crowd follows the shadow on the wall, never questioning the hand that casts it. And in this theater, he who masters the shadows commands the stage forever. Exile, loss, and betrayal are not failures, but crucibles. The man who survives them returns harder, sharper, and stripped of illusion. Those who have never been cast down remain soft, mistaking favor for permanence. But the one who has been broken and rebuilt himself knows that power lies not in avoiding ruin, but in rising from it, transformed. In this sense, to be unrecognizable is to carry scars invisible to others, scars that whisper of battles endured, of nights spent in solitude, of calculations refined in silence. Such a man does not seek approval, for he has tasted abandonment. He does not crave trust, for he has survived betrayal. What remains is resolve, and resolve is the marrow of power. The cold law is simple and merciless. Power is not sustained by being known, but by being unknowable. To reveal is to weaken, to remain unreadable is to endure. Men can conspire against what they understand, but they tremble before what they cannot predict. The ruler who embraces this law no longer walks among equals but above them, not by divine right, but by the sheer force of being untouchable, ungraspable, and beyond the reach of familiarity. This is not a choice for the timid, but for those who accept that the crown is not a reward, but a weight carried best by those who have become strangers even to themselves. Power is never absolute. It is always contested, always tested, always shifting. To believe it can be secured once and for all is to misunderstand its nature. Power is not a monument, but a current, flowing ceaselessly through the hands of those strong enough to seize it and disciplined enough to keep it. The throne is not a chair of rest, but a seat of vigilance, where every whisper may carry the seed of conspiracy, and every smile may conceal a dagger. The wise ruler accepts this endless uncertainty not as a curse, but as the condition of command. He does not lament instability. He feeds on it, for in flux lies opportunity, and in chaos lies the chance to reorder the world to his favor. Human beings are drawn to certainty even when it is false, to strength even when it is ruthless, to images even when they are illusions. They prefer the security of deception to the terror of truth. This is why appearances govern more effectively than reality. It is not necessary to be virtuous. It is necessary to appear virtuous. It is not necessary to be just. It is necessary to display justice when it serves. The crowd cannot bear the raw machinery of power, but they will kneel before its symbols. Thus, the ruler must become an actor as much as a strategist, one who plays the part demanded by circumstance while concealing the script he has written for himself. The mask, once mastered, becomes the ruler's truest weapon. It allows him to move among men without being pierced by their expectations, to inspire trust while plotting betrayal, to project humility while harboring ambition. The mask is not hypocrisy, it is survival. Those who demand authenticity mistake politics for friendship, forgetting that friendship ends where interest begins. A ruler cannot afford such illusions. He must be able to wear one face to win loyalty and another to secure obedience, always ready to discard both when the situation requires a new design. To cling to one mask is to invite ruin. To master many is to remain unassailable. The game of betrayal is not a deviation from politics. It is its very essence. To wait for loyalty unbroken is to wait for eternity. Men betray because the promise of advantage outweighs their memory of service. The wise ruler never rests on bonds of gratitude, for gratitude decays faster than stone. He ensures that betrayal costs more than fidelity, that the risk of treachery outweighs its reward. When men fear to betray because their survival depends on obedience, loyalty becomes not a sentiment, but a necessity, and necessity binds more tightly than affection ever could. Fear must not be confused with terror. Terror destroys quickly, but it leaves only ashes. Fear, when calibrated, sustains obedience without breeding revolt. The ruler who strikes too harshly plants seeds of vengeance. The one who strikes with measure plants seeds of respect. The balance lies in being feared enough that disobedience feels suicidal, but restrained enough that submission feels natural. It is in this balance that empires endure, for men will always conspire against cruelty that humiliates them, but they will bow before strength that disciplines them. The solitude of the ruler is the final test of his endurance. The higher he climbs, the more hollow the voices around him become. Counselors flatter, allies maneuver, followers praise while secretly resenting. At the summit of power, he must trust almost no one, and at times, not even himself. Solitude is not weakness, it is clarity. It is in silence that strategy is sharpened, in isolation that the mask is perfected, in loneliness that necessity reveals itself without the distortion of affection. Those who cannot endure solitude cannot endure power, for rulership is not companionship but burden. To become unrecognizable is to accept that you will never again belong to the ordinary circle of men. You will no longer be remembered for who you were, but for what you became. They will fear you, envy you, obey you, but they will never truly know you. And that is the point. Recognition is vulnerability. Predictability is defeat. To walk this path is to erase yourself until only the presence of power remains, a shadow that commands obedience without ever revealing the man who casts it. This is the true metamorphosis, the ruler who has shed his former self until nothing remains but the unassailable mask, the cold law embodied, the unrecognizable sovereign. The ruler who endures understands that time itself is a weapon, sharper than any blade and more certain than any army. He does not rush to strike simply because the opportunity tempts him, nor does he withhold action out of fear. He measures the moment with precision, acting only when the wound will be fatal and the risk minimal. In this patience lies his cruelty, for his enemies often die not by his hand, but by the inevitability he allows to ripen. The wise ruler does not chase victory. He allows it to fall into his grasp when all paths for his rival are already closed. To wait is not passivity but domination, for it bends time itself into an instrument of power. Every empire rests on a stage, and every stage requires an audience. The people are not rational arbiters of truth. They are spectators of appearances. They crave stories of triumph, rituals of justice, symbols of continuity. Give them these illusions, and they will forgive the harshest necessities. But deny them spectacle, and they will despise even the gentlest ruler. Men follow not because they comprehend, but because they believe. And belief is born not from reason but from image. Thus, politics is theater, and the ruler must be both playwright and actor, ensuring that what is seen eclipses what is real. Behind the curtain, decisions are cold, calculations ruthless, but before the curtain, gestures must inspire. A ruler who forgets this distinction will be undone, for truth without illusion is unbearable to the masses. It is not enough to control the present. One must also shape memory. History is the afterlife of power, the shadow that lingers after the body is gone. If you do not dictate how you are remembered, your enemies will. The chronicles of nations are not written by those who lived, but by those who survived long enough to impose their version of events. To rule effectively is to command not only armies and laws, but also narratives. A failed war can be remembered as a noble sacrifice, a brutal purge as an act of necessary justice, a betrayal as a triumph of foresight. Control the memory, and you control the future, for the lessons of yesterday are the chains that bind tomorrow. The ruler who refuses to adapt becomes prey. Rigidity is a fortress that crumbles under siege, but adaptability is a river that carves its path through stone. To endure, one must be both predator and shadow, visible only when striking, invisible when threatened, always reshaping according to necessity. Adaptation is not compromise, it is strategy. The oak that resists, the storm breaks, but the reed that bends survives. In politics, survival is the ultimate victory, for from survival springs the chance to strike again. Men desire to believe that justice governs the world, that merit brings reward, that virtue ensures stability. But justice without power is a sermon for the weak. Merit without influence is a whisper lost in the wind. Virtue without force is a relic, admired but ignored. The true ruler understands that these ideals are ornaments, not foundations. He employs them as a craftsman employs tools not for their beauty, but for their utility. Mercy when it strengthens obedience, cruelty when it extinguishes defiance, fairness when it cements loyalty, deceit when it prevents betrayal. Nothing is sacred except survival, and survival demands the mastery of every instrument, fair or foul, with equal coldness. In the end, to become unrecognizable is not to vanish, but to ascend beyond the categories by which men are measured. You cease to be a man of flesh and desire in their eyes. You become a force, a presence, a shadow that looms over their decisions. They do not think of you as one among them, but as something beyond them, a horizon that defines their limits. This is the final metamorphosis, the coldest law of power embodied. To outgrow recognition, to dissolve identity, to stand apart as a figure that cannot be named, cannot be predicted, cannot be destroyed. In this form, you do not merely hold power, you become power itself. To stand as power itself is to abandon the comforts that bind ordinary men. Companionship, sentiment, and the desire for understanding become weights that drag a ruler into the mire of weakness. The sovereign must accept that to be obeyed, he must also be feared. To be revered, he must also be envied. To be remembered, he must also be hated. The longing to be loved is the most dangerous flaw, for love is fragile and evaporates at the first touch of necessity. Fear endures where love decays, and respect lingers where affection falters. The ruler who clings to affection builds his house on the shifting sand of men's emotions, but the one who commands fear erects his fortress on the bedrock of instinct. The face of necessity is cruel, yet it is also liberating. Once the ruler abandons illusions of purity, he becomes capable of decisions that others cannot even conceive. He may sacrifice allies when they are liabilities, deceive those who trust him, manipulate those who admire him, and punish those who serve him not out of malice, but out of clarity. For the true cruelty lies not in the act, but in hesitation, in allowing weakness to poison the body of the state. A single act of calculated severity prevents 1,000 acts of chaos. Mercy without measure breeds disorder, but cruelty with precision preserves order. The ruler who understands this distinction rules not as a tyrant, but as a surgeon, cutting only to preserve the whole. The theater of statecraft requires that this necessity be hidden beneath gestures of virtue. Men cannot bear to see the naked machinery of power. It would terrify them into revolt. They must believe in justice even when justice is designed, in mercy even when mercy is staged, in fairness even when fairness is a mask. The ruler who cloaks his cold calculations with the garments of morality ensures obedience without revealing the knife beneath the robe. Deception here is not treachery but mercy, sparing the people the unbearable truth of their own submission. They are happier believing in illusions than in realities, and happiness, even false, keeps them docile. Time reveals that the greatest victories are not those won on the battlefield, but those won in the minds of men. Armies can be defeated, fortresses breached, wealth stolen, but belief endures beyond conquest. The ruler who implants the belief that his authority is inevitable has already conquered without lifting a sword. When men think resistance impossible, They govern themselves into obedience. To become inevitable is the highest form of rule, for inevitability is a chain no blade can cut. Yet the sovereign must always prepare for decay, for all power faces erosion. Success breeds complacency, wealth breeds decadence, peace breeds arrogance. The cycle of decline is as certain as dawn. The ruler who ignores this truth hastens his fall, but the one who anticipates it bends the cycle to his advantage. He purges corruption before it consumes him. He revives fear before it fades. He reintroduces necessity before luxury rots the will of his people. In this vigilance lies his endurance, for he becomes not the victim of decline but its master, directing it against rivals while shielding his throne. In this long campaign, the sovereign becomes less man and more design. He no longer acts from impulse but from calculation, no longer reacts but orchestrates. His words are chosen not for their honesty but for their effect. His silence is timed with precision, his gestures choreographed to instill awe. To his subjects, he is not flesh and blood, but an image, a symbol, a rhythm that governs their lives. And in this image lies his immortality, for while men perish, symbols endure. To become unrecognizable is to become untouchable, and to become untouchable is to step into that rare space where mortality bends before the cold machinery of power. The sovereign who learns to shape both fear and hope holds the double edge of power in his hand. Fear ensures obedience, but it corrodes if left untempered. Hope offers relief, but it deceives if left unchecked. The ruler must alternate between the two, giving enough fear to remind them of his might, enough hope to keep them from despair. Too much of either breaks the balance. A people ruled by fear alone will conspire in desperation. A people ruled by hope alone will grow bold in entitlement. But a people who fear punishment, yet hope for reward, remain bound to the hand that both restrains and feeds them. Thus, the ruler's craft is to measure these forces like an alchemist, mixing them until submission becomes second nature. Every throne is a battlefield, disguised as a seat of command. Rivals circle not only in the open, but within the shadows of friendship, marriage, counsel, and alliance. It is not the enemy across the border who first breaks the sovereign, but the confidant at his side. Betrayal is not an exception, but the rhythm of rule, and it is foolish to meet it with surprise. The ruler must build his state as a fortress of suspicion, never granting full trust, never leaving a flank unguarded, never believing loyalty without testing it. He must reward service, but never cease observing. And when disloyalty reveals itself, he must cut swiftly and without hesitation. To delay is to invite conspiracy. To act with decisiveness is to terrify others into renewed obedience. There is no purity in politics, only necessity clothed in language men can endure. Those who cling to ideals without strategy fall swiftly, mocked even by those they sought to save. The sovereign cannot afford the luxury of innocence. Virtue is useful only when it strengthens command, and vice is permissible only when it preserves stability. To rule is not to be good, nor to be evil, but to wield both as tools. The heart that hesitates over moral purity is already chained, but the hand that embraces necessity is free to shape the world. This freedom is not without cost, for it requires solitude, coldness, and an indifference to the judgments of those who do not bear the weight of command. In the theater of appearances, weakness is death. To admit doubt is to invite challenge. To display confusion is to summon rivals. To reveal fatigue is to encourage rebellion. The sovereign may feel these things in private, but in public, he must radiate certainty even when surrounded by chaos. Men follow not the man who is correct, but the man who is convinced. They submit not to truth, but to confidence. The ruler who falters in his bearing is already undone, for men sense hesitation as wolves sense blood. Thus, the performance of power is as critical as its possession, for power unseen may as well not exist. What remains at the core of this path is transformation. To endure, the sovereign must become something beyond recognition, beyond the grasp of memory, beyond the limits of identity. He must shed his former self as a serpent sheds its skin, not once but endlessly. Each rebirth erases old weaknesses and births new strengths. To cling to the past is to be shackled by it. To abandon it is to become untouchable. The man who achieves this stands alone, feared yet admired, envied yet obeyed, never truly known yet always remembered. In becoming unrecognizable, he ceases to be merely a man. He becomes the embodiment of the coldest law of power, the silent command that bends all others to his will. The ruler who has mastered transformation no longer views himself as fixed but as fluid, adapting form as circumstances demand. Today he may appear merciful to soothe unrest. Tomorrow he may strike without warning to extinguish rebellion, and the next day he may vanish into silence to cultivate unease. His essence is not found in any single mask, but in the ability to change masks without ever being unmasked. This is why recognition is perilous. Once the people think they know you, they begin to predict you, and once they predict you, they conspire against you. To remain unrecognizable is to deny them this weapon, to deny them the comfort of certainty, to force them to live in the shadow of your unpredictability. In politics, nothing corrodes authority faster than predictability. Even benevolence, if expected, becomes weakness. The sovereign must resist the temptation to indulge habit, for habit breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. He must instead design moments of shock, a sudden refusal where a favor was anticipated, a silent withdrawal where a response was sought, a swift punishment where leniency seemed assured. These interruptions fracture expectations and remind all that his hand cannot be second-guessed. Men who cannot predict cannot resist, for resistance requires calculation, and calculation requires certainty. The ruler who abolishes certainty abolishes resistance itself. The art of rule is inseparable from the management of perception. Men see what is presented, not what exists. They draw conclusions from symbols, gestures, and appearances, never from truth. Thus, the sovereign's task is not to reveal reality, but to choreograph illusion. He must dress severity in the cloak of justice, cloak ambition in the guise of duty, disguise necessity as generosity. The people will believe the mask so long as it satisfies their hunger for order. They do not seek the truth of power, for the truth is unbearable. They seek only a story that allows them to live without fear of chaos. Give them that story, and they will surrender without realizing it. The enemy who threatens openly is less dangerous than the ally who whispers loyalty while concealing ambition. Betrayal grows not in the camp of foes, but in the circle of trust. The ruler must therefore learn to see treachery before it ripens, to sense the shift in tone, the hesitation in words, the eagerness that conceals a plot. He must never allow personal affection to blind him to necessity. To act too late is to fall. To act too soon is to alienate. Precision is everything. And when betrayal is certain, mercy must have no place, for mercy in such moments is interpreted as weakness. Only the decisive blow restores order and prevents contagion. Above all, the sovereign must accept the loneliness of command. To be feared, envied, obeyed, this is to walk apart from others, never embraced as one of them, never fully trusted, never fully loved. This solitude is not a curse but a shield, for it frees him from the illusions that enslave common men. He cannot lean on friendship, for friendship bends under pressure. He cannot lean on affection, for affection dissolves under necessity. He can lean only on vigilance, calculation, and the cold hand of discipline. It is in this solitude that clarity is born, and in clarity that power endures. To become unrecognizable is to ascend beyond the fragile identity of man and into the architecture of force itself. When others cannot define you, they cannot bind you. When they cannot predict you, they cannot defeat you. You move like shadow and strike like fate, untouchable not because you are invincible, but because you are unreadable. This is the coldest law of power. Survival is not granted to those who remain the same, but to those who dissolve and reform endlessly, until nothing remains but presence, inevitability, and command. To command is to live within a theater where every gesture is scrutinized and every silence interpreted. The sovereign cannot escape the stage, but he can master its script. He must understand that the people crave symbols more than truths, and symbols demand performance. A measured nod may inspire more loyalty than 1,000 proclamations. a calculated pause more fear than an open threat. The ruler who refines his presence until it becomes indistinguishable from myth achieves a kind of immortality in the minds of his subjects. They cease to see a man of flesh and begin to see an emblem of fate, and against fate, resistance feels futile. But to remain on this stage requires constant reinvention. What captivates today will bore tomorrow, and what terrifies now will embolden later if repeated without variation. The sovereign must introduce uncertainty into the very rhythm of his rule, a sudden act of mercy where cruelty was expected, a ruthless purge where leniency was assumed, a calculated absence at the moment they most anticipate his presence. These are the movements that keep his image alive, unpredictable and feared. In this unpredictability lies the secret to longevity, for men cannot conspire against what they cannot anticipate. At the heart of power lies manipulation, not of laws or armies alone, but of perception itself. Armies enforce obedience, but perception creates consent. It is not enough to punish disobedience. One must also convince the obedient that submission is in their interest. This requires not brute force, but the subtle engineering of belief. If they believe your rule secures order, they will guard it themselves. If they believe your downfall invites chaos, they will silence dissent before you must. Belief transforms subjects into accomplices, turning the machinery of power into a self-sustaining order that requires only your presence to endure. Yet belief is fragile and must be constantly maintained. Rumors, defeats, and rival illusions can erode it swiftly, if not countered. The ruler must therefore dominate not only action but also narrative. He must ensure that every failure is reframed as a lesson, every cruelty as necessity, every silence as strategy. Memory itself must be bent to his will, for history is not what happened but what survives in story. To control memory is to control destiny, for men live not in the present alone, but in the echoes of what they think has been. The sovereign must also accept that cruelty is a blade that dulls with use. Excess weakens its edge, while precision sharpens it. A single decisive act terrifies more than constant bloodshed. Repeated cruelty numbs the people and invites rebellion. Strategic cruelty paralyzes them and prevents resistance. To strike sparingly but unforgettably is to preserve the authority of fear without exhausting it. Mercy, too, must be rationed, for when it is given too freely, it ceases to inspire gratitude and becomes expected. True power lies in measuring both cruelty and mercy as currencies, spending each only when their value is greatest. The coldest truth remains that survival in power requires the abandonment of self as others know it. To cling to identity is to grant your enemies a map. To cling to memory is to hand them a weapon. To dissolve into unpredictability, to shed every skin as necessity demands, is to remain beyond their reach. This is not merely strategy, but transformation. Not the act of ruling, but the act of becoming. When you are no longer recognized as a man bound by habit, desire, or predictability, you ascend into something more enduring, an embodiment of command itself. And in that form, untouchable, ungraspable, unrecognizable, you fulfill the coldest law of power. In the end, all rulers face the same trial: to outlast the fickleness of men and the corrosion of time. Wealth will pass, armies will falter, alliances will fracture, and even the most devoted followers will one day turn their gaze elsewhere. What remains is not the affection you inspired, nor the justice you claimed, but the fear you instilled, the awe you maintained, and the image you crafted. To rule is not to be loved, nor to be remembered as kind, but to be endured as inevitable. Those who seek to be embraced are soon discarded, but those who make themselves indispensable are never forgotten. The sovereign who becomes unrecognizable transcends the fragile identity of man and enters the realm of force. He is no longer bound by expectation, no longer predictable, no longer vulnerable to the traps of familiarity. He is a shifting presence, a living architecture of necessity. His enemies cannot strike him because they cannot define him. His allies cannot control him because they cannot grasp him. His people cannot resist him because they cannot imagine life beyond him. This is the final metamorphosis, when the ruler ceases to be merely an individual and becomes the atmosphere through which all must move. This path is merciless. It demands solitude, vigilance, and the cold abandonment of illusions. It is not for those who crave comfort, nor for those who yearn for absolution. It is for those who understand that power is not a gift, but a burden, not a reward, but a weight. To bear it requires the willingness to erase yourself in order to embody something greater, not virtue, not morality, but command itself. The coldest law of power is this: you must master the art of becoming unrecognizable, for in recognition lies defeat, but in unrecognizability lies permanence. When they cannot name you, they cannot bind you. When they cannot predict you, they cannot destroy you. You become not the ruler of a moment, but the architect of fate itself. And in that silence, in that distance, in that remorseless clarity, you achieve what few have dared to grasp: the power to endure beyond affection, beyond betrayal, beyond time. You become inevitable.